And I'd like to give a very warm thank you to some of the folks that helped put this webinar together and help get the word out. Number one is the fabulous Lisa DeSautel from Graphic Imaging Services, one of the folks helping to set up this webinar today. So thank you very much to her, but also to Nick Krieger, a board member of the UGIC Council, for posting this on the UGIC board, and so we appreciate that as well. And so let's go ahead and get started. So our webinar today is around Esri Mobile Apps, Spike photo measurement, and how field data collection, those two things work together for a smarter GIS and field data collection. Here's a quick look at the agenda that I'd like to cover today. Just kind of gives you a blueprint for how I'd like to cover this. We'll talk a little bit about about Spike and the technology, but I'd like to get into the demo as quickly as I can, so you can go ahead and see how the Spike app works, how it works with Survey123. And then we'll wrap it up with sharing with you some common projects and applications, some use cases, and then share with you the special offer here at the end for everyone that's joining us today, followed by a Q&A session, which I always look forward to. So first, let me start off with what our vision for Spike was. Well, for ikeGPS, we recognized, as I'm sure a number of you have on the call here today, that there's just a very wide and growing trend where professionals are seeking to use their smartphone or tablet in more than just a personal context. How do we put a smartphone or tablet, for which we've already been given for work, and how do we really put that to work in the field? And that's a little bit, it's easy to say, it's harder to actually do. And that's what ikeGPS and their development Spike was really created to do, is that when we looked at ways that people use GPS, we looked at ways that people use measurement products, these things were really built for experts to go out and use in the field. And that's okay. There's a reason to go out and have experts go out in the field. But what happened if we made it simple and easy for just about anybody to go out and collect that data? What happens when we can mobilize a larger workforce? And if we're going to do that, there really has to be an expectation that measurement tools are intuitive to use, are accessible in their use, accessible in cost. But we always wanted to make sure that people had the opportunity to be able to leverage the investment they've already made into mobility, also leverage the investment they've also made into Esri, as I'm sure a lot of you on the call have invested in already. And so our vision for Spike was how to deliver a new and unique measuring capability to make a system from beginning to end that was simple and accessible to use by any field worker. Now think about that. How do we take a novice person, take them off the street, train somebody in under an hour on how to go out and collect good, useful geospatial data? People that are already working with us in the field, that maybe already work for us, not doing those types of functions, and put them to work to go out and collect data that we're currently not collecting today. And how do we take complex measurements that today take really complicated tools and make it as easy as using your smartphone or tablet? And so what we wanted to do was create a way to augment the power of both the tablet and the phone, not replicate it, but put those technologies to work to go out and help a user community such as Esri go out and get answers to the things that they're very kind of difficult to get answers to. For example, how tall is a tree, or how much damage has been done to this building, or how wide is this right-of-way? What's in my right-of-way? And so today, ikeGPS and our mobile products relate upon tens of thousands of businesses across multiple different types of applications and use cases to get those answers. And that's really what we're all about. How do we make a simple, easy-to-use way to go out and collect field data so that you, as a GIS user who's responsible for providing answers to others about where things are, what things are, and how tall or wide things might be, and how do we make that as easy as we possibly can? And what we talk about is that how we bring measurements and GPS location within reach of millions of new users simply by taking a photo. That's literally how simple that we've tried to make this, so that you are pointing your mobile phone or your tablet at an object, taking a photo, and then creating a scaled image for which then you can do accurate measurements with. So think about this. This is something that we've all been doing as GIS professionals with aerial photography and satellite imagery for years and years. We've just figured out how to do that with a mobile device. And one of the reasons that we chose to do it with a mobile device is that because everybody knows how to take a photo with a mobile device, right? You'd be hard-pressed to find somebody that would admit that they didn't. So we just combine technologies so that people can take photos of things and then measure. And because we've made it so easy, and because of this integration with Survey123, with Esri Survey123, we truly believe that Spike and Survey123 working together will forever change your mobile field data collection workflows. It will forever change the way that you expect a mobile device to work out in the field. And after you see the demo, I feel confident that you agree. But Spike is being used for multiple applications requiring the inspection, assessment, and reporting of features. But remember before how I said that Spike was really about getting answers easier. If you look at these different, different areas of work, it's all about delivering answers. What's the dimension of this sign so I know how to replace it? How much DoD and Intel, how much rope do I need to get up? I'm sorry, how much rope do I need to get down? How much ladder do I need to get up? What are my breach points? What are my distances between escape and entryways? Facilities management. How much paint or drywall do I need? How much? What is my what is my energy conservation outlook look like because I have windows versus concrete? How much damage do I have to a particular building? Is something within code? How much square footage and how many trees do I have in the park? What's their height and what's their width and all these other types of things? Things I'm sure that you've probably had to do and probably spent hundreds of thousands of dollars on equipment and training. But what if I said that we figured out how to do that with a $500 device? All right, so Spike is $500. I'll go ahead and disclose that now. But that was just a simple app that was free and that worked with Esri Survey123, an app that you're already paying for probably under your enterprise license agreement. And all of a sudden you have this capability to go out and collect all this type of data that you really couldn't do very efficiently before, but do it with people that aren't engineers and surveyors. Is that something that would be of interest to you? And the market has said, absolutely it is. Because when ikeGPS and Esri were putting together this workflow, we went out and we asked, and actually Nick Krieger was one of them, we said, why aren't you doing more field data collection? And that's a real question to you right now. Like, think about that. Why am I not doing more field data collection? And the answers are almost always universal. At least this is what we saw when we built this workflow. The number one reason that people weren't doing more field data collection is that, it's just too expensive. It's too expensive for me to have to buy, a Trimble Geo or a Lino or all these other types of things. And, I bought the unit, now it requires maintenance, and I got to do training and all those other things. And by the way, those are great products, by the way. I don't disparage them in any way. It's just that those are how they were designed, and that's how they were brought to market. So yeah, those things are expensive. But then the other thing that we asked, that we got when we asked that question, the response back was, it's just, it's just too hard. Setting it up is too hard. Creating forms, too hard. Managing the data, too hard. Training people on how to use those devices, just too hard. And we said, okay, how do we go and make it just so simple that you could train somebody in under an hour to just point, follow a couple basic rules, take pictures, measure right on those photos, and get data into a geodatabase. And we've been able to accomplish that. But the other interesting thing is that the third part is that, well, because it's too expensive and because it's too hard, me as a GIS group, I really rely upon other people, engineers and surveyors, to go out and collect this data for me. Or when I do collect it, this data, I do it very sparingly, which creates bottlenecks. So we're not collecting nearly as much data as we could, as much data as we want. And I think that everyone on the call here today would agree is that, well, having more information that's good data that allows me to do more analytics, that allows me to have more information about the areas for which I'm responsible for helps me to make better decisions. And that's what this integration and this workflow is all about. Because what's happened is that for GIS professionals especially, field data collection has become this Achilles heel. I only go out and get data when I have to, or when I do have to, it's this huge drama about how I set this up, and we want to create simple workflows so that anybody can go out and collect the data, get good data, bring it back, and get the answers that they need, to make better decisions about how they manage their area, their services, or whatever that might be. Let's not make it costly. Let's not make it hard or time-consuming, resource-heavy. Let's just make it simple. So let's talk a little bit about that. So let's talk about Spike now. So now you know the reason for it and why we built it and why we've done this integration. But let's talk about what exactly is Spike. So Spike is a laser device. So as you see here, and there's 3 different types. There's a tablet, smartphone, and my personal favorite, the OtterBox version. They all operate the same. It's just how they attach is a little bit different, but it's a laser. It's a laser device that attaches to the outside of your phone, that connects via Bluetooth to your mobile device, works with our Spike app that you download from, it's either Android or iOS, that you download for free. And then once you have that loaded, you have everything that you need to be able to work with an app, and I'll demonstrate it, to be able to point the laser at the object, take a photo of that object, and then be able to measure that object, including areas, heights, widths, elevations, distance to targets, offset GPS locations, all sorts of really simple things that are really simple but very impactful for the right applications. Now, Spike as a laser rangefinder depends upon, and the app itself depends upon, GPS location, the mobile compass, inclinometer, connectivity, and all those other types of things from the mobile device itself. Now, some of you may sit there and go, there's the gotcha. GPS on a mobile device isn't that great. And for some applications that would be pretty accurate, because we all know if you've ever gone out and collected data with a mobile device, the mobile device accuracy, GPS accuracy, 3 to 5 meters on a good day, could be 15, could be 30, could be even 60, depending upon where you're located. So one of the things that we've done is to be able to make sure that Spike works with third-party GPS to be able to improve the positional accuracy of where the Spike is. So we've worked with these on screen here: Bad Elf, Trimble R1, R2, Juniper Geode, EOS Arrow, those types of things. Those are all ones that our users have used and said, thumbs up, this works pretty good, we like it. If you're interested in another third-party GPS, that's fine. It's just that what you have to know is that, one, it has to Bluetooth in to your mobile device. Second, it has to have a code available to it so that it tells the mobile device to stop using its own signal, swaps for the third-party GPS signal, and then the Spike app should be able to read it. The other thing, too, is that we've learned from experience, and I'm sure a lot of you have learned from this experience as well. It's one thing to go out and collect data, but where data goes is probably 3 to 5 times as important, right? And so that's one of the reasons why we've worked for easy ways to get data off the device and to work with groups like Esri as a Silver Partner Network, and that's what we're talking about today with Survey123. We just started working on Collector, so that'll be coming out here hopefully sometime this field season. I'll give you some more information about that later. But also working with Autodesk to be able to get data in. And so one of the exciting things now, we have Esri and Autodesk working together, so now I can actually mention Esri and Autodesk on the same presentation without getting into trouble. But which is so important is that how we pull data, how we get data off the device seamlessly into a database, or where it's got to be worked on, simple and easy. Now what I'd like to do is share with you some of the basic measurement capabilities that we have, and they're unique. And remember earlier I said we do very simple types of measurements, but that are very impactful for the right applications. And here's some examples of that. So first off is distance to target, or target distance. So how far away is something from me? As you can see here, this is a KMZ file export from Spike. It says that I'm here, and there's where the laser hits, and it will give me that distance between those two targets. Where does that ever come to play, you might ask yourself? Well, think about how many times did you, how much time and effort did you spend sometime to be able to figure that out. For example, we have a lot of local government applications where people use Spike for code enforcement, so that they'll stand on the right of way, say for example a sidewalk, point the laser at the fence, and then be able to get an instant reading of the distance of far away. So if it's supposed to be a minimum of 20 feet away and that reading says it's 22 feet, that's a pass. I take a photo. I have a record of that in my Survey123 form. Also has a record that I was there because everything is georeferenced. Uploads and off I go. Other examples are distances, between the width of roads and other things like that is another example of target distance. Or sometimes just knowing, for you have a point source pollution outflow and you're just standing next to it and you want to know the distance to the wetland without having to get your feet wet, right? Pointing across, or the width of a river. Any number of those things would be good applications for that target distance. The second is that we do target location. So that's GPS location with a distance offset. So we capture two GPS locations actually, where the target is, where the person is, the observer, that Spike location, but then also because we're working with the inclinometer and that compass, and that laser rangefinder allows us to be able to calculate in space where that GPS location with a distance offset is. So how many times have you, had to GPS locate something that wasn't accessible or was not safe to be able to access? That's a good example of why GPS location with a distance offset might be a good idea. Or just to be able to stand in one spot and be able to capture 6 or 7 trees in a park from a single location without having to walk or stand underneath it and do all those other, just once again, very simple applications, but very impactful for the right users. So then we get into our measurements. So there's photo measure, so that's measuring on a 2D plane. So that, for example, so think about measuring on a wall, or for example, on the surface of the sign, for example, or on the ground. We can do area and linear measurements. And then we have point-to-point measurement. So that's measuring between two objects or 2 points in 3D space. So here you see measuring the start of the ramp and then the bottom of the ramp, where we capture 2 photos for reference, but it gives you the distance between those 2 points as well as slope. Another good example of that is that, say for example, wanting to know the distance between, just to use an example of there's a suspicious package and what's the distance between the suspicious package and a piece of critical infrastructure. Or you're trying to measure, the height, you measure the height of a tree and then you want to say, okay, this tree is now dead. What's the distance between that dead tree and say a house or something like that? Those are all things that are easy to calculate from the ground using point-to-point measurement with Spike. Now, some of you may be asking this question now, James. How accurate are these measurements? I'm going to spend just a little bit of time on that because this is really important, because this really helps you to understand where Spike fits as an overall tool in your geospatial toolbox. So for the photo measure, we say plus or minus 1% accuracy, and with point-to-point, we say plus or minus 3% accuracy. So what that means is that, and I'll use the photo measure as an example here, it's going to be within plus or minus 1% of the real-world measurement. So if something measures 10 feet in the real world, 1% on either side of that, on the side of that measure, is going to be a good enough measurement for us. So that's one of the reasons why we don't market Spike as a precision tool, but we market it as an estimation tool. And understanding what your tolerance for accuracy in a particular measurement for an application is really important, because there are reasons to go out and take a more accurate, a more precise measurement. But think of how many times that plus or minus 1% certainly would have been good enough, but you had to wait for a precision measurement, or you just didn't do the measurement because you had to use the more expensive tools, the more expensive personnel. Once again, this gets back to that whole idea about how do we make field data collection simple, easy, and accessible because of cost. But remember, it has to be within the tolerance of accuracy and for the right applications. So what does this integration look like? And what's it all about? This integration that we did between Spike and Survey123 is an integration that was built to provide you, as an Esri user, a combined tool set to boost field data capture productivity and provide a higher ROI in your investment in your mobile technology in using Esri. And the workflow was really very simple. The idea being that you, as a GIS user, using Survey123, creates a very simple form. Can be elaborate, but we'll keep it simple here today, and we'll keep it simple for the demo. But that you use a form that when you encounter an object or a feature for which you'd like to have a Spike photo capture done, that it will put in the Spike logo here, which will allow you to be able to go out and take photos, say for example of this tower here, take a photo of it, be able to get measurements, know its GPS location, and be able to harvest the information that you want and bring it automatically into the forms, but also with a photo, and here's a bigger picture of it here as a screenshot, the photo with the measurements embossed with that photo as a part of that form. Now there's a couple kind of blockbuster things here. One is that we're having information being captured digitally and then entered directly into a form, which is awesome. But the other thing that we have is that for the first time we have a photo with the measurements embossed on it, so we have a physical representation to know exactly where our measurements are coming from. So think about how many times that you've looked at maybe some metadata or some attribution, and you looked at it and you sat there and you said, I just have to trust that these measurements are correct. Well, you have something for reference now. You can see it. And so you're capturing photos, measurements together, but they're also representative together in a single scaled photo. Pretty cool, right? I think so. And it's the I wouldn't say it's the number one thing, but it's one of the top things that people say is that it's just so much more relatable that I can see these measurements, but also see how those measurements relate to a feature for which was measured in the field. And then from Survey123, we get it right into ArcGIS. Now, I assume that everybody here on this call is familiar with Survey123, but just in case that you aren't, this is one of the two field data collection apps that are most popular out there by Esri. The other one being Collector. But Survey123 was created to allow people that weren't necessarily comfortable navigating by map, but were more comfortable by doing forms. Like, for example, you see in SurveyMonkey and things like that, it says, go out and survey the trees. You find a tree, you have a form, and then you fill in a whole host of data associated with that. And one of the things that's really just great about Survey123 is that it's great that it has that form-based data collection, but it's organized, and it allows you to capture such more richer metadata than what you are capable of doing today with Collector. And what's really been interesting in watching the Spike user community grow through Survey123 is watching what people are collecting, but also why they're collecting it in the way that they're doing, but also having them come back and say, we've always been so preoccupied about collecting new data, but now we're really preoccupied with going in and adding in attribution that we never could get before with things that we've already located in GPS. So for example, of knowing the heights of fire hydrants above grade, or we knew we had these trees and we knew what types of trees we had, but we had no idea about tree heights and tree widths and crown widths, and because we always thought we had to get an arborist to do that. Now we can just do that with Spike. Or we always wanted to inspect our roads and bridges in a different way. We never really had a way to do that until we could enable our maintenance workers to go out and collect data. And that's what's just really so cool about working with Survey123. So much like Spike, designed to make things easier, make field data collection easier. And Survey123, in my opinion, does a really good job with that. So with that, continuing on, just to give you an idea of what these forms look like, and I'll demo it here shortly. So a Survey123 form is configured with a Spike question type, so that when you sit there and you encounter something that you want to collect the distance on, or collect the area, or the width, or that type of thing, you'll invoke a question type that will put the Spike logo right into the form. You point the Spike laser at the object of interest, you take a photo, measure right on screen, all the things that we talked about before, links areas, GPS locations, and so on, loaded right back into the forms with the photo, and then submit straight into your ArcGIS. Just that easy. So I'm sure you're tired of hearing me talk about this now for the last 30 minutes or so. So let me fire up my tablet and get this going here. And of course, it has disconnected itself. So this will just take a second here for me to power it off and power it back on. My apologies here. But anyway, while I do that, let me just share with you a little bit about what I'm going to show you here in the demo. So what I'm going to do is with the demo, I'm going to start within the Spike app and then move over into Survey123 to show you how those photos easily transition over into the digital forms. Oh, come on now. Oh, as always with live demos, right? It's always something going on here with how you connect in these technologies here. My apologies, just give me a second here to get this rolling. Oh, it just does not want to cooperate here. Ah, there we go.
Hooray. Thanks, James.
Thank you for the cheers. All right, there we go. We got it running. Screen sharing can sometimes be a little finicky with these devices, so thank you for your patience. Okay, so we're all set and ready to go. So here's Survey123, and here's the Spike app here. I'm going to go ahead and start with the Spike app. So this is the main page here, and you'll see here it says Spike disconnected. Connect Spike. So of course it's really important that your Spike is on, otherwise that laser isn't functioning. And the laser is a really important part of what we do. So turn on your laser, like I'm about to do now. Go ahead and tell it to connect Spike. It tells me there's my Spike and there's my signal strength, the Bluetooth signal strength between the two. I go ahead and click that on. Now it tells me that my Spike is connected, and then it gives me the battery power that I have left remaining in the device. Here's my two measurements, photo measurement point to point. I'll get to that in just a little bit. Gallery is where I can go to go out and work with photos for which I've already taken. I can look at these photos. But also the interesting thing is, and I haven't shared this with you yet, but we're actually working with a live photo that I can go ahead and update, so that if I wanted to go ahead and add in the length of something, I can go ahead and do that, add that into the record. So I have a live and dynamic photo that I can work with. Think about that. That's never really existed before. It's almost a new type of attribution, that I have a scaled image that I can access again and update. So think about how many times, well, I'm sure it hasn't happened with anybody on the line with me, but I'll say it's happened to me, where I forgot to measure something or I forgot to collect something. If it's on this photo, I don't have to go back. I can get that, right? And so that is certainly a benefit in and of itself. And then settings is simply where I go to be able to set my units of measurement. I can do feet, inches, meters, centimeters, calibrations that I might need to do from time to time, different configurations such as the laser indicator, which is a red dot on the photo for reference, so you know where the lasers hit, alignment grid, and so on, and different things like that. So what I'm going to do is that I'm going to start with Survey123. So my GIS coordinator or my GIS manager has set up this form for me. I'm tasked with going out into the field. And so I simply go ahead and open that up, and now I'm going to sit there and say, I'm going to go and collect. And then all the features that, the measurement features that we've talked about, such as measuring distance to an object, measure the area of an object, length of an object, location, this is all here. And this is all broken out individually, but it doesn't have to be. The way that we designed the workflow is that, so if you said, I want to measure the distance to an object, but also measure an object, or maybe I want to measure an object and also get the location of an object, I can do that all within one photo. I just have to phrase the question that way, and it'll pull that information out of the file. But just for demo purposes, we broke this up. So let's say, for example, we're measuring the distance to an object. So that's very simple to do. So in this case, if I go ahead and turn on the Spike app, I click on the Spike icon. I'm sorry, I just click on the Spike icon. And so you'll see here is that we have this little laser rangefinder that is constantly giving me distance to target. So that's how I get that information. So if I want to get the distance to that object there, I just simply point, click. It's going to collect that information, go back to Survey123. There's a photo for reference, and there's my distance in meters to the photographed object. You can also set this up in feet. It just so happens this form is set up in meters. Just that simple. So now let's go ahead and let's measure. So I'm tasked with maybe perhaps I'm doing code enforcement and I'm documenting graffiti and I need to have an estimation of materials for that. So there's my graffiti there. I'm just going to point the laser in the middle of that. Take a photo. Now remember, we talked about creating scaled images here. So the laser gives me distance to target. That's the first part of the equation because that helps to give me scale. However, I'm at a slight angle here. So I need to adjust for that. And so how we do that is by using an alignment. So what that means is that I find a feature, so I find something within the feature that allows me to align this photo, a natural occurring rectangle. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my finger and I'm going to put them on each one of these circles and find a natural occurring rectangle. And here I have that, right? So I'm just going to use these edges here. But notice what happens to the grid as I do that is that it starts to adjust and making sure that the measurements are accurate and to the proper plane. I'm setting the plane by doing that. So go ahead and hit next. And then once I do that, my area and my length tools pop up. So I'm just going to take my finger and I'm going to drag and drop from one corner to the next. And there's my measurement. Now, you may have noticed as I was doing things, right, that these little windows pop up in the opposite corners. Like, so for example, in the upper right-hand corner in this example, really helps me to dial these in to be able to get the measurement that I'm looking for. Help that to be a little bit more accurate. Also, it's about this time that some people ask, hey, can you do more complex shapes? The answer is yes, you can. Just hit add and then hit the different segments that you want to put that in. You can also remove those. Do here. But anyway, I've captured the area where my graffiti is. I want to go ahead and hit save. It's going to go back to Survey123. There's the photo with the measurements in it. There's my area and the number of dimensions and the measurements of those. Remember, these are in meters. And so now I have a very accurate understanding of not only how much paint that I might need to cover the surface area, but I know exactly where it is. So think of applications where you might integrate Workforce and Navigator into something like this. And so I'll actually have a use case of where our local DOT has done that. So measuring the length of an object is simple enough. You know how to do that. But let's say estimating the location of an object. And let's say here that I'm doing a tree inventory here in my local park. I'm going to use my sad little office tree here as an example. So once again, hit the Spike logo, it fires that off. I just point it, and let's say, you know what, we want to do GPS location by the base. Okay, fine. Click that. Back to Survey123, there's a photo for reference, and there's the latitude and longitude with a distance offset. Now, some of you may be asking, how far does this laser operate? Laser operates up to 200 meters away, 650 feet, roughly. Pretty good laser range for that size of for a $500 laser, right? Pretty simple workflow too. Would you agree? I hear lots of agreeing, so I'm going to go ahead and continue on. So what I'm going to do now is that oh, I'm sorry. And then when I'm done, I just go ahead and hit check, and I've just updated my geodatabase. Couldn't really be much simpler, right? But remember, that's the whole idea. Make it simple, easy, affordable. Now, one of the things that will be coming out in the next release of Survey123, so I showed you photo measure, is point-to-point measurement. Now, we haven't released that yet into Survey123, but so I'm going to go back to the Spike app to show you, but that same workflow that you saw with photo measure will be available in the next few weeks in the next release of Survey123 with point-to-point. So point-to-point is simply, go back to the app and I choose point-to-point, and say, for example, I want to know the distance between, let's just say that this is a point source pollution outflow here. What's the distance between that and something else on a different plane? Go ahead and do that. And it gives me the two photos for reference and the distance between those two targets, as well as the horizontal and vertical distance, so I can then calculate angle and percentage. By the way, this will also work for, say, measuring a suspicious package, like this very messy wastebasket. And so I just hold it steady until it tells me it's ready. Over there. And there's the distance between those two objects. So once again, right, where something like that might come into play, maybe measuring the distance between I don't know, wildlife nest and the road, or the distance between 2 points in the road, or any number of different things where you would want to know the difference between those 2 points. There's plenty of applications that we've heard of. Okay, so I'm going to switch back over to the presentation now, but that was the demo. So what projects and applications people using Spike and Survey123 for? Well, here's just kind of a quick list of what we've seen of different departments. I'll focus on the applications, but transportation agencies have really been one of the top adopters of Spike, but also Spike and Survey123. Because if you think about it, they have so many needs and so many requirements to measure things. And a lot of the things that they need to measure are safety issues, for example, such as signage. How do you measure something that's hanging over the side of the road without having to shut down traffic? Spike allows them to do that. We've also been doing quite a bit with code compliance and inspection. So, for example, measuring graffiti, measuring height of vegetation, documenting broken fences and other things like that. Just really simple things, but also doing quite a bit of emergency management and disaster response. So, unfortunately, these last couple of years, we've had some terrible hurricanes. We've had hundreds of spikes deployed to allow people to be able to sit from a safe distance, capture measurements of damage, and then be able to tie them to parcels, because remember, everything that we're doing here is georeferenced, and then tying that all up into a really nice package for disaster relief. And think about that, how important that is to have that disaster relief or that assessment being done properly the first time really is. Spike really helps to be able to do that. But anything having to do with the less interesting stuff, facilities management, how much drywall, how much paint, indoors, exteriors, asset management, you name it, it's been done, and new things pop up all the time. Right now we're doing a project with the Jane Goodall Institute, and being able to do location of chimpanzees and being able to capture that type of wildlife from a distance is really important. But having georeferenced photos and being able to have those counts in the photo to make those simple and easy. Or raptor nests has also been another one that we've heard about, because certainly if you don't have to climb the cliff to be able to figure out where it's at, right? All the better. So what I'd like to do now is share with you just a couple of quick case studies. And one of my favorites to share is Colorado DOT. So we've deployed Spike with Survey123 for ArcGIS with Colorado DOT to help them to be able to capture data in the field more efficiently. Now, what that data capture is varies wildly depending upon what's going on, but we started with signage, and now we've moved on into maintenance of buildings and other pieces of infrastructure. But for them, what they did is that they looked at their field data collection and said, today only my engineers and surveyors are going out and collecting data. That creates a bottleneck for me. How is it I could be capturing more useful information to capture where potholes are, or damaged buildings, or guardrails, or inspect my signage on a regular basis? And they sat there and they said, you know what? Our number one resource out there in the field today are our maintenance people. How do we give our maintenance people the tools so that if they see it, they can report it and do it easily, but also give us all the information that we need to make decisions on the spot and address them? And so, for example, a maintenance worker is out, sees one of their buildings that's been damaged, or maybe somebody has spray painted it with graffiti, or there's a damaged guardrail. We use the damaged guardrail here for this example. That they can sit on the side of the road, take a photo of it, measure it, they know exactly where it is, submit that up through Survey123, then have somebody look at it back in the office and sit there and say, oh, this is a damaged guardrail. It's in between mile marker 5 and 6 on State Road 54. It's this type of a guardrail. I can see that. This is how much I need to replace it. I'm then going to use Workforce from Esri, another app, to be able to task the person how to go and get that. I have all the materials, and then use Navigator because I know exactly where it's at. That is an example of boosting field productivity, because we're allowing people to have better information to do better, to be able to make better decisions and be able to address the issues more directly. And one of the great things about Colorado DOT is they gave us this great tagline. It says, what used to take us months now takes us minutes, which is great. That's just an awesome endorsement of a solution that we've built. Another example to share with you today is City of Winston-Salem. City of Winston-Salem had an ordinance change of where signs could only be a certain height and of a certain size. And after a year grace period, they then had to go out and inventory all of those signs. Now, they didn't have land surveyors to do this work, and they couldn't hire out. As a matter of fact, they put out an RFP, and the cost to have a third-party vendor go out and do this inventory was between $200,000 and $500,000 to inventory the sign in the city. Instead, what they did was they took 4 personnel, 4 spikes, went out. Now, it took them certainly a little bit longer to be able to do this, using it with using this with Esri to be able to map things as they went along. But we're able to do that for the cost of 4 spikes. Right, so 4 times 500 is $2,000. Already had Esri, right? Now it's just the personnel time, but it allowed them to be able to solve that problem without a huge expense. The other measure of success for them is that how many of these violations were contested, because usually when they have people that we test to be somewhere in the neighborhood of 15 to 20%, they were able to knock it down into the single digits. And anytime that you're not having people contested because you have photo evidence and there's a record of it and it's proof that that you've done it and it's yours, people tend not to contest it as much. And then, of course, there's the case study that started it all. And if you've been to a UGIC conference, you've already seen this, but this is Carbon County with Melissa Laszlo, and she was one of the first people to mash up Spike with Esri and be able to show that Spike and Esri could work together, but also the tremendous benefit of having those two technologies work together. As a matter of fact, I've told Melissa this, and I'll tell everybody on the call here today. I owe Melissa a couple of bar tabs and a really nice steak dinner one of these days when I see her. But she was able to document an ROI that was really quite incredible. 500% ROI in less than 1 month. How many tools do you have in the toolbox that deliver that? And the reason why it was so high was because she had the right project with the right need. She needed to go out and do assigned inventory for the county. She had limited personnel to go out and do it. They were not really trained on field data collection. They needed to replace 5 or 6 different pieces of equipment in the field with a very simple solution, and they were able to do that with Spike and Esri. Now, we're running a little bit short on time, so I'm going to speed up things here just a little bit, but this El Paso Electric, did notice that a couple of folks online with us today were with utilities. Same applications here with measurement. It's just a little bit different about being able to measure things, but at a safe distance. So as you see here, is I don't have to, from Alejandro with El Paso Electric, I don't have to get close to the equipment. I can do that from a distance, and I feel very comfortable in doing that. Being able to get square footage from a distance, be able to check the box off on an inspection just to get an estimate of the size of an area was really all she needed. Check the boxes on all those fronts. So I'm going to take a slide here to wrap things up, share with you this special offer, get to the questions. Why should anybody care? So what, right? We've built this Spike application. We've done this integration with Survey123. So what? Why should anybody care about that? Well, first off is that we try very hard to make the economics of mobile field data collection better. How do I get more people into the field more economically, getting the data that I need to help you get the answer that you need, depending upon what that application might be? How do we generate a very quick ROI? A $500 device is pretty simple to get an ROI on, even if you use the device 2 or 3 times in a year. The minute that you're not taking 2 people out in the field, the minute that you're doing complete digital field data collection without writing things down, the time that you don't have to go back and capture something again because you already captured it the first time in the photo, now you can add it. You can see how this starts to add up just really, really quick. And because it's so simple and easy to use, I hazard a guess that just about everybody on the call here today would say, would feel pretty comfortable. They'd be willing, they could try this and figure this out in less than 30 minutes. But it just goes to show that it's a very fast adoption rate, very easy to scale because of its cost and also because of its ease of use. And I'm not going to read all these, I promise you, but just pick out a couple things. But being able to reduce those equipment costs, not having to lug out a GPS and a laser rangefinder and a separate tablet and all these other things and trying to make them work. This is all integrated together, working together. And it's just so important that anything that we add into a workflow these days not only just leverages the investment in mobile technology, but is just simple to learn, easy to adopt, compatible with what you already use, saving time in the field. This just all rolls up into that whole concept of number 1, which is making the economics of mobile field data collection better. So before I get into Q&A, let me just thank everybody for joining me today. I always enjoy sharing with everyone the technology that we've built, sharing this integration that we've built. As you can tell, I'm very proud of it because if you really think about it, it's the first time that anybody has really developed a complete end-to-end mobile field data collection workflow specifically designed for the novice user. Everything else that we've always built over the last 20, 30 years has been towards that expert or that intermediate user. This is truly for the novice user. The mobilization of a workforce by making data accessible, not making data collection scary. And so I hope that what you've seen today is compelling enough to either A, have a conversation with us more about your particular project, or have you join our user community and buy a Spike. And if you purchase a Spike via our online shop between today and March 15th, which is a little over a month from now, so you have 30 days to consider it, we'll give you a free protective holster for your Spike. So that's a belt clip with a holster that you can put that in there and protects your Spike from when it's not being in use. And to get additional information, you can go to ikeGPS.com or click on that. Well, I'm not going to read you the URL. You can get on that URL. You can also request a copy of this presentation. I believe we are recording this presentation as well, so we'll be sending it out to all attendees. But if you want to have a conversation with me one-on-one, please do. I'm always really interested to hear what other fellow geospatial professionals are doing out there in the world, and would love to have a conversation with you about that. My contact information is below, and feel free to reach out. So with that, Vanessa, I know that there have been a couple questions stacking up here because I can see the number rolling up there. What are some of the questions that we got today?
You are correct, James. And folks, please feel free to ask your questions in the Q&A or chat box. We've got them open. The first one was simply around, which you also stated just a few minutes ago, was a recording of this video. And this webinar has been recorded. It will be posted on YouTube, and we'll be emailing out a link tomorrow. So good news there. Now on to your questions, James. The first one we have here is, will Survey123 and Spike work with a Windows Surface Pro tablet?
Unfortunately, no. So Survey123 will work with Windows. There's an integration for that. But for Spike, we only work with iOS or Android devices. And the reason for that is that because the vast majority of mobile devices out there in the world run on that, and you'll find that unless you're a big company, it's very difficult to develop now for the Windows platform. So, because there's just not a lot of people using it. So my apologies, but no.
Next question. What is the estimated accuracy of the laser at 200 meters?
So it's roughly 2 centimeters or 5 inches is the accuracy of the laser.
Next question. Could you please provide some more information on the output from Spike and Survey123 related to the assessment industry? For example, would it essentially be the pictures with measurements on top of them, and then it can be used as attachments in the geodatabase by parcel?
Yeah, the answer to that is you can absolutely set it up that way. And thanks for that question, because actually I've been talking with an integrator in the assessment world that has commercial software that is Esri based, that they're working on integration now. And we actually just had that conversation, what would be the most useful. So certainly the photo with the measurements embossed are a part of it, but also getting access to the specific measurements themselves to be able to put into a form that can be later be used for algorithms and other things like that later, to be able to calculate square footage and all those other types of things would certainly be useful. And actually, it's one of the really cool things about using Survey123 is that you can actually add formulas into Survey123 that will take the measurements and then do other things with them. So for example, we have people that will take the measurements of, let's go back to the graffiti example, that will take, if you take a photo of something that was, all right, let me back up. I got too excited. Okay, so we're doing code enforcement. I go out and I see a violation. I've seen this. It's been here for a couple of months. It's graffiti. The homeowners refuse to do anything with it. Now we have to do something about it as a city. I take a photo of it. I get the area measurement. As a part of that, I know how much that paint costs. I know the area, and then I can then calculate what the cost plus human labor and other things like that. Have it all roll up in that form. So then I can spit out on the spot, an estimation of labor for that particular task. Another interesting one that we've seen is DOTs using Spike, using point to point to be able to calculate a volume of sand. Right, so we don't do kind of a cone valuation, or a mound valuation. We use Spike to be able to measure the top to the bottom, do that a couple times, and then be able to put the calculation of the area of a cone into that. You just insert that into the form, and it'll calculate that. Now, is it tremendously accurate? No. but it's better than anything else that they have to be able to to do that. So I would say certainly the individual having access to the individual measurements as well as the photo with measurements would be important in that particular application.
Thanks. And on that topic, we have one of our knowledgeable attendees passing along this FYI to us with regards to assessments. And he says that the measurement outputs could also be used to update the CAMA systems that are in the assessor's office.
Yeah, that is true. And once again, hopefully the correlation between location and parcels and all that is something that makes that quite a bit easier. Yeah, so thanks for that addition. Any other questions?
I think that may be it. I'm seeing if anybody has any last minute questions they're going to type in, but I'm not seeing it, James. So I think we are done today.
All right, I think we nailed it. So, so thank you everybody for joining with me today. And like I said, I hope that you will take the opportunity to join our user community, become a spiker, and buy a spike. We have a 30-day money-back guarantee, so if you buy it and for whatever reason you don't like it, you can always return it. No questions asked, but I warn you, nobody really returns them. If it wasn't perfect for you, somebody always finds a reason to use it for something else. So, and one of these days, I hope to make it out to UGIC very soon. It used to be one of my favorite conferences to go to. Unfortunately, I just have not had an opportunity to make it out there, and hopefully I get a chance to put faces to names really soon and learn from you directly how people put in Spike Survey123 to work. Oh, and the one thing I forgot is, no, I did mention Collector. We're working on Collector, so keep an eye out for that. And we look forward to chatting with you real soon in the near future. Have a wonderful day and have an even better weekend.
Thank you.